How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the Last Seed podcast. As always, it's John. Got Ty with me today.
What's up?
Before we start this episode, we are at 99 subscribers right now. 99.
Wow. One more.
One away from triple digits. So please, if you can hit that hit that subscribe button, please do so. Also hit that like button as well, and also check us out on Spotify if YouTube isn't your thing. So we're going back into the time machine today.
Again.
Again.
Yeah, we need like a cool sound effect.
Yeah, we do need a cool sound effect. But anyways, this is gonna be a consistent one. We're not even just gonna be. I don't even want to do Bills with the time machine thing. I want to do like other stuff with it. We'll figure that out in the future. But yeah, we're going back in the time machine today. 2014 Buffalo Bills. We're picking up where we left off with the last episode of this. This was I think we were texting a little bit before this. This was probably my favorite drought season.
Yeah. There was a lot going on this season.
Yeah, and there was a lot of and I'm gonna go at the end of the episode. Or maybe in the middle of whatever. I'm gonna go into like what was my favorite thing about the season, why this is my favorite drought season. But a lot of stuff happened this offseason. Main thing we got to lead off with Ralph Wilson Jr. Passing away during this offseason. Definitely dominated headlines for the Bills. A lot of uncertainty around what was going to happen with the team. This is really at a point where, you know what I mean, this was the day a lot of Bills fans were, were expecting coming. Obviously, we're not all dumb here. Ralph Wilson was getting up there in age, and there was talk about, what would happen to this team when Ralph passed away. But yeah, there was a lot of worry and tension among the Bills fan base at this point.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I remember, when the news came out and stuff, and obviously it was super sad, owner for such a long time. And, there's a lot of questions that raised, like, who's going to be the new owner? Or maybe, are the Bills going to relocate? There's been all those Toronto games, that's something that circled around. So definitely something that kept you thinking and on your toes.
For sure. And at this time, too, there wasn't really a lot of hope around the Bills. We're coming off another 6-10 season, it was really looking like it was a possibility that this team could move. But obviously, as we know now, that never happened. Terry Pegula, new owner of the team. I think you would have to say it was probably one of the most relieving things when Pegula bought the team. I mean, obviously, he owned the Sabres. He wasn't going to move the team. It was definitely, like I said, relief from Bills fans.
Yeah, 100%. Like you said, he owned the Sabres, still owns the Sabres. I think when, we found out he was buying the team as one of those things where we could kind of just wipe the sweat off and be like, okay, hey, we don't have to worry about them, going anywhere else.
Yeah, something you don't have to worry about for a long time. Because that was a huge cloud hanging over this team for a while. But, you know what I mean? We got that out of the way. Back to the football aspect of it. Kiko Alonso, star rookie linebacker, big injury in the offseason. Definitely a huge blow. I remember, I think I was 16 or 17 years old when this news broke, and I was devastated.
Yeah, we talked about him a lot in the first episode from the Time Machine, the 2013 season. I can't even tell you how many times we brought his name up just from plays that he's made, not just, interceptions and stuff like that, but the tackles and tackles for loss, just a tremendous rookie season. And then, we knew there was some good, even coming off of a 6-10 season. We knew there was some good stuff headed into, the off season, headed into the 2014 season. And he was definitely one of the bright young stars. And to see that was just devastating.
For sure. And there was another big question with his defense. Mike Pettin becomes the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, and we're switching defensive philosophies. Jim Schwartz was already a proven guy, but, he just got fired from being Detroit Lions head coach. Also, too, probably one of the most awkward press conferences. I think I sent this to you like months ago when I was like joking around about something, and yeah, when Doug Marrone introduced him, it wasn't really it didn't really get my confidence going.
Yeah, no, it was I don't know if anyone's confidence got going.
Oh, that was Yeah, that was pretty rough. But what wasn't rough was the way Jim Schwartz coached his defense, and we'll get more into that as we go through the games. But start us off here,
Sure.
Ty. Wait a minute. Oh, hey, but we gotta go through what we gotta go for what happened in the preseason. We gotta go for what happened in the preseason. Something big happened in the preseason. I think Ty can let us know about that.
I don't recall, John.
So the guy's jersey that you're wearing was so bad in preseason that we had to call a journeyman quarterback out of retirement.
Oh boy, and who was that?
So the Bills were having quarterback trouble in the preseason, and I think EJ was even hurt at some points during the preseason. I think there was even bringing more questions, and we had some injuries at quarterback. So bad
Hmm.
that the fourth preseason game that Matt Leinart came in and probably played one of the worst quarterback games by a guy not named Nathan Peterman. So yeah, they put the Bills in the full panic mode and had to call Kyle Orton, who pulled a fast one on the Cowboys out of retirement.
Yep.
So
Yeah, I'm
but
just gonna shake my head. That's all I'm gonna do.
Kyle Orton's definitely coming more into play here as the season goes along. But start us off with
Can't
game
wait.
one.
Yeah, so go through the offseason like you said with what's going on with the owners, what's going on with the team, the injury to Kiko, the quarterback question during the preseason, and we get to week one against the Chicago Bears. And the Buffalo Bills pull out a OT win 23-20 over the Chicago Bears. I want to start with the Bears side of the ball. Um, Cutler, 49 passes thrown, threw for 349 and two touchdowns, but had the two picks, sacked a couple of times. Matt Forte, good game on the ground, 7 for 82. Brandon Marshall, a touchdown. Um, Martellus Bennett, a touchdown. But I look for the Bills side, and I see EJ Manuel, 16 for 22 with a touchdown and a pick. So it's like, all right, not the best game. Had a rushing touchdown, but something I'm going to bring up a lot during this season is the play from the Bills defense. And Corey Graham had a nice 45-yard interception, and then somebody who, if I gave you a million tries, you probably would never guess he ever had an interception, but big Kyle Williams.
I remember this interception. I do.
Yeah, that was great, dude. Um, but yeah, it was Kyle Williams. Just we talked about him last episode. Just as great as he is, just one of those guys that he's a Fred Jackson. He can be retired for a million years, and people are still gonna be talking about Kyle Williams.
Yeah,
Um,
true Buffalo Bill ever since the word.
oh, absolutely. And then Leonis McKelvin, 13 tackles. Just not to get too deep into it, but just kind of a little insight on that. So the Bills start off the season 1-0, and then they go and they take
But
on
now,
Miami.
now something about this
Oh,
Bears game I want to go over real quick. I
oh, go ahead.
remember I remember when the Bears, I think they opened up. They drove right down the field on their first drive or whatever, scored a touchdown, and the Bears were coming with a lot of hype this season because they had they had Mark Trestman, who was getting a lot of hype as a new head coach. They're like, all right, he's going to open up the offense for Jay Cutler, all this type of stuff, all these type of weapons, and they come out first drive and score on us. I'm like, yep, we're getting blown out today. I legit thought we were going to lose by like 30 points.
I forgot about that first drive, so I'm glad you brought that up.
But yeah, like I remember because I remember like all the stuff going into this game too. We're playing the Bears on the road. Expectations, I feel like right before the first game were just so low.
Oh, for sure.
But yeah, definitely a great win for the Bills. Start off 1-0. Let's go on to game two.
Yeah, so game two, divisional opponent. At home, the Bills handle the Dolphins 29-10, and they shut the Dolphins out in the first half. They go to 2-0. Definitely some stuff that stood out in this game. One thing for me is running back C.J. Spiller had a 102-yard kickoff return for a touchdown, and man, C.J. Spiller is like, I feel like he was like LaShawn McCoy at sometimes before LaShawn McCoy. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense, just like his running style and stuff, it reminded me so much of McCoy. Um, but Tannehill, 31 40 for 49, 241 a touchdown. Manuel, not a bad game. 16 for 26, 202 and a touchdown. Looking at the defensive side, McKelvin, who we talked about week one with all those tackles, gets on the stat sheet with a pick. And guys, Preston Brown and Corey Graham also double-digit tackles for them. So definitely a hot start to the season. And, for me personally, and I think for a lot of Bills fans, it's one of those things where it's like, all right, do we not have to worry about shuffling quarterbacks in and out this whole season? Like EJ's helped us get to 2-0. Do we finally have someone that we can start every week?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely looked like he was managing the game well these first couple games. It was definitely the defense that was doing a lot of the heavy lifting, getting turnovers and
Oh
stuff
yeah.
like that. I will say one thing: this game is a great memory for me because this was the Terry Pegula's first game as an owner and stuff like that. It really confirmed everything. I mean, he came out. I think he came out in the field during halftime, I believe, made a speech
Yeah.
to the fans and stuff like that. Um, the relief I was talking about, it was really shown that game by, you know what I mean? You saw it in person from everybody, all the Bills fans and stuff like that. But yeah, it was just a great scene. It was probably one of the best drought scenes I probably seen. Like, all those years we didn't make the playoffs. I think this was one of the best vibes games from the
Oh,
Bills.
for sure.
Just because of that reason. And they won.
Right, right. Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot to cheer about during those times, but yeah, like you said, that's another great point. Is definitely a cool feeling, not just celebrating like the touchdowns and the big plays and stuff like that, but that was something where it's kind of like, oh man, like we're buying into this. Our team staying here, and especially in your 2-0, it's like, man, you're sitting up pretty high, like when it comes to all those emotions.
Yeah, I was definitely very hopeful at this point.
Right. But the Bills head into week 3 and take on the then San Diego Chargers, and they dropped their first game of the season 22-10 um, to the San Diego Chargers. Let's get into some of the stats, if you will. Philip Rivers, 18-25, 256, and 2 touchdowns. Donald Brown, not somebody, if you told me, hey, where'd Donald Brown play? I probably would have took a bunch of guesses for it to get me to, he was on the Chargers. Um, he had 31 rushing attempts, only 62 yards. So the Bills did a good job as far as that. Um, but Malcolm Floyd, 2 catches for 98 yards, man. I mean, I remember those guys like, Eddie Royal too. Keenan Allen was on there. Antonio Gates only 1 catch. That's not something you're going to see very often. But as far as the Bills, not a bad game from EJ. Coming into the third game, 23 of 39, 238 and a touchdown. Took 3 sacks. No one really stood out that much. Scott Chandler was the, um, I'm sorry, Fred Jackson was the leading receiver, 8 for 78. Chandler had 5 for 74. Um, and on the defensive side of things, safety Aaron Williams, along with Nigel Bradham and Preston Brown, double-digit tackles. One of those things where, I think, like you said, they were kind of riding on the defense to make some plays in the first couple of games and didn't really get like the takeaways. They might have been hoping for. Maybe we're leaning on them a little bit too much.
Yeah, I remember this game a bit. I think it was a really windy day out there, but Rivers was still just methodically carving us up and stuff like that. I could be
Mhm.
wrong on this. I don't have the stats in front of me, but I think they killed us in time of possession in this game. We just, you know what I mean? They just owned the clock, it seemed. I don't know if you have that in front
Yeah.
of you, but.
Let me see. For some reason, nothing wants to load now. Oh, let me back. Let me see. I should be able to get it. Time of possession. If you want to know what surface it was played on, it's turf. That shows me that.
Well, yeah, great.
Oh, time of possession. No, not as super lopsided. 31 minutes for the Chargers, 28 for the Bills. So
Oh, okay. Maybe
not
it was
super
because Rivers
lopsided.
was just killing us so much. I was just sick of him getting the ball.
Right.
But yeah, definitely not a great performance for the Bills. Definitely a letdown.
Yeah, definitely a letdown, like you said. But one of those things where it's like, okay, we're still sitting at 2-1. Um, So I don't think there was like a ton of panic or anything, at least. And then they head into week 4 and they head out to NRG Stadium, take on the Texans, and the Texans give the Bills their second loss in a row, 23-17. Bills were up 10-7 at halftime, I believe it was, and only ended up scoring one touchdown from there on out for the rest of the game. Um, man, look, I don't even want to talk about this game. The JJ Watt interception, man. I
That's what
can
I remember
picture
from
it.
this.
Like, Manuel drops back, literally looks to his right, tries to get that quick pass off, and there's Watt, man, just like a freaking like cannon, just shot out of the cannon, goes up, picks it off, and takes it back, and it's one of those things where it's just like, dude, like what is going on? Manuel did, I guess, can you say make up for it? He had an 80-yard touchdown pass to Mike Williams.
Yeah.
One of those games too where we talked about it I'm saying last season, but last episode where we covered last season, where EJ threw the ball 44 times this game. That's not something you're game planning for. You don't. This guy's in his second year, but only has a few games under his belt. You don't want him throwing the ball 44 times.
But yeah, I don't know. It just seemed like this game, and we'll get into. I think this game really showed why they made the decision that they made after this game. It's just that I don't know. It's just you can't have stuff happen like that where you're just like you said, you're just throwing it right to Watt for an interception like that, and your defense is playing great. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Now you're only
Fitzpatrick did not have a great game for Houston, touchdown and 2 picks. So it's like your defense is helping you out.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess we gotta announce what happened after the game.
Yes, EJ Manuel to the bench, Kyle Orton starting. What was your first reaction when this news broke?
Gosh, I don't even know. I couldn't even tell you what I was thinking or anything. One of those things where definitely I didn't understand it just because your quarterback, you started off 2-0. You dropped 2 in a row. It's like, okay, I don't think it was a full panic time yet. I probably would have let it go like another game. And then if it's like, hey, like, you lost 3 in a row, but your quarterback is, like the main reason why you're losing, I can see, hey, let's put him to the bench or whatnot. But I don't understand it being 4 games into the season, you're 2 and if you were 1-3, maybe. If you're 0-4, okay. Excuse me. But to go 2-2, I think that Doug Marrone had this in his back pocket, and he wanted to get Orton in there any way he could. You can't do it obviously after you're 2-0. You know,
Mm-hmm.
EJ loses his first game. You're not doing it after 2-1. They lost. The 4th game, it's 2-2. I felt like he was like, hey, this is our chance now. Whether it was his decision in Marrone or whether it was a higher up, I think this was their plan all along. Once they brought Orton in, they're like, hey, let's give him some time to he's unretired. Let's give him some time if he's got to get in shape, throw some footballs or whatnot. But I think this was their plan all along. Was any chance they had to throw Orton in there, they were going to do it.
Yeah, I think this was mostly a Marrone move. If anything, I think higher ups would have probably wanted EJ to play because they drafted him. This is a first round pick that we're benching year 2 for a career journeyman.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also too they were seeing how good the defense was playing, and they were like, hey, you know what I mean? I think they thought, you know what I mean? We have the defense. We have a top 3 defense, maybe. The way they were playing these first 4 weeks, and they're just like, hey, we need a guy that's going to be able to take care of the ball, and Orton brought that stability. I'm not saying Orton's a great quarterback or anything like that, but for the 2014 Bills, I think you're going to get more wins out of Kyle Orton than EJ Manuel. And I don't know, it's just that's a big indictment on EJ is that the coach that Marrone drafted Manuel.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot for him to say, like a year and change in, for him to go with someone like Kyle Orton. Like I said, career journeyman. This is a guy that started for a lot of teams, but never really was a top flight quarterback at any point in his career. Yeah, he won games before. A lot like a Fitzpatrick. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That tier level of quarterback. You know what I mean? I might even take Fitzpatrick over Orton. But
I'm
I mean,
taking anybody over Kyle Orton.
oh come on, you're just a hater. But I mean, But I mean, I don't know. That's just a big indictment on EJ to me that they basically had to beg a career backup, not career backup, but a career journeyman out of retirement. And like you said, I think they told Orton when they got him out of retirement. I think they told him right out. And I think Orton even said like, "Hey, I'm not doing this unless I'm playing." You know,
Right,
so because that's the reason why he pulled a fast one on Dallas. He retired because he wasn't playing anymore. He wanted to
right,
hold and see if he can start somewhere.
for sure, for sure. So speaking of Kyle Orton, we get into week 5. The Bills taking on the Lions, and the Bills pull off a come from behind win with 11 points in the fourth quarter to beat the Lions 17-14. Um, Speaking of Orton, 30 for 43, 308 in the air, a touchdown and an interception. Um, Definitely, was slinging it to Sammy Watkins. He had 7 for 87 that game. Fred Jackson another 7 receptions. Two guys that scored in this game were probably, I guarantee you, nobody besides Bills fans or like OG Bills fans will even know who these are. Chris Gregg,
Chris Gregg.
yep, and the other one, I'm sorry, where is it? No, that was okay. I'm mistaken. I'm mistaken. Chris Gregg had the only touchdown. The rest were field goals.
Oh yeah, because he won for 2.
Yep. Okay, I read that completely wrong. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I would have
Chris.
thought the same thing.
Yeah. Um, Stafford 18 to 31, 231, a touchdown and a pick. Golden Tate, man, 7 for 134 and a touchdown, just completely was carving us up. Um, Definitely good job by the defense. Gilmore added a pick, one of my favorite defenders from the drought era. Um, but yeah, definitely a good sign, I guess, for maybe people were scratching their heads when they announced the quarterback change. Maybe people are excited, but I mean, you throw Orton in there in his first game, they're winning. You got to be happy at least.
There were some pains in the beginning of that game, though. You did throw a pick six in that game. I was definitely thinking at that point, like, oh boy, he's got some rust to shake off.
Oh, definitely had some rust.
Another thing about this game, so do you remember this in the game? The lasers being pointed at Dan Carpenter.
Now that you mention it, I remember briefly about it, but I would have never remembered it unless you didn't mention it.
Yeah, so I remember Dan Carpenter was also great this game. I think he hit a really long field goal to win, right?
Was it like 54 yards or something like that?
It
Maybe.
was at least something like that, yeah. So yeah, Dan Carpenter was great, but I remember one field goal he missed. He's like complaining to the ref, and we're in a game. I'm just like, "What's he complaining to the ref for? You missed a kick." But he was
Right.
pointing up in the crowd, and we found out after the game that there was Lions fans pointing lasers in his eye,
Yep.
and that's pretty bizarre. That you know
Oh,
what I
for
mean?
sure.
That happened. That was allowed. I don't know if people saw him doing it, but that's
Right.
it's crazy.
Yeah, for sure. Um, so yeah, Bill's sitting up on a good high after Kyle Orton's first start, first win. Then they go into Buffalo and take on New England, and New England pretty much pounces them 37-22. Vintage Tom Brady. I mean,
Vintage
you
Tom Brady in
know,
Buffalo wins,
yeah,
kills
yeah.
us.
To say the least, Brady, 27 to 37, 361, and 4 touchdowns. Edelman, 91 yards receiving. LaFell, 97 yards. Gronkowski, 94 yards. Um, Orton, 24 of 38, 299, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Scott Chandler had a good day, 6 for 105. Robert Woods and Chris Hogan had the receiving touchdowns that game. I don't
Chris
know if this is a
Hogan.
game. Yeah, what a name. I don't think this is a game anyone really was like super confident that the Bills would win because, like you said, I mean, all Brady and the Patriots did was ever come into Buffalo and destroy us.
Yeah, the probably the only one of the only times this season I was disappointed with this defense. This defense was absolutely great, like 95% of the year. So, I mean,
Right.
you hate the, you know what I mean? complain about a game about them, but I mean, this is one where you can point to where they just got absolutely obliterated, and it is Tom Brady, so I mean, there's not really any shame in that. But yeah,
Right.
I mean, Bills are sitting 3-3. Probably you're saying to yourself at this point, like, hey, maybe you're hoping that we can at least be in the hunt by the end of the year.
Right.
There's
Right.
still hope in the air that the Bills can make a season out of this.
Yeah, for sure. And even though, like you said, even though it's a loss, Bills bounce right back, the next week at home. And man, do I remember this game. One of the best games I've been to. The Bills come back and they defeat the Minnesota Vikings 17-16 in the final seconds of the game.
Orton's clutch.
Or it's clutch. Yeah, we'll talk about Jerick McKinnon, for Minnesota, 103 yards on the ground. Bridgewater, 15 to 26 to 157, a touchdown, 2 interceptions. There's that defense you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
That was something good to see him bounce right back after a bad performance.
Yeah.
Orton slinging the ball 43 times, 283, 2 touchdowns, an interception. Leonis McKelvin, 2 picks, man.
Leotis, my man.
You got some good games out of Leonis McKelvin, man. He was one of those guys I feel like you either loved or you just couldn't stand him. But
Yeah, I had both those emotions with him throughout his Bills career.
but let's talk about it. You said Kyle Orton is clutch. I remember being at the game, and the Bills were down 16-10 in the fourth quarter, and I remember people I think were like leaving because I
How
was
did
with
you a
my
one
dad.
score game?
People were leaving or getting hitting the exits, and I remember looking at my dad. I'm like, huh. I'm like looking around, like people are leaving already, and I'm like maybe they just weren't confident or whatever. And then Kyle Orton, I believe it was to the left side of the end zone, hit Sammy Watkins for the 2 yard game-winning touchdown with like 1 second left. And I remember my dad and I just jumping up and screaming. And I remember I looked at my dad and I just yelled, I'm like, that's why you don't leave the game early. And we just couldn't believe that people were leaving this game early. Like you said, it was a one-score game.
Yeah, I mean, Sammy Watkins had, I hate to use this word, but he had aura his first season when he first came in the league. Like when we went up and drafted him, we traded up and all that type of stuff. It was like, all right, we're trading up for like this receiver. He definitely showed out a lot of times in the beginning of the season. It was just, I'm not going to say Sammy was a bad player, but he definitely underperformed his expectations later in his career. But man, like this first half of the year, you're thinking like, wow, this guy's going to be the next great Bills wide receiver. He's going to be like, up there with Andre Reed one day.
Yeah, for sure. I remember watching the draft with my brother, and we're sitting there, and all of a sudden you get the alert the Bills traded up, and I remember I'm like, dude, they're getting Sammy Watkins. Like I was so confident they were trading up for a receiver, and that's who they're getting. I remember telling my brother, I'm like, they're getting Sammy Watkins, and then they end up drafting him, and I'm like, dude, this is insane.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like I was just like, man, I'm like, this is a draft pick I like. Like I was like, all the emotions, like you said, this guy has, they're bringing him in to be one of the next greats, but like you said, we all know what happened after, unfortunately.
Yeah, sadly. But yeah, there was
But
a lot of hope for Sammy at this time.
oh, absolutely. And speaking of hope, the Bills head into MetLife and blow out the New York Jets by 20 points, 43-23. And speaking of Sammy Watkins, he catches a 61-yard touchdown pass from Kyle Orton. Great to see these guys having chemistry so early in the season, especially with Orton, just getting some starts. But Kyle Orton, this man had 10 completions for 4 touchdowns. 10 completions for
EJ's not
four
doing that.
touchdowns.
EJ's not doing that.
Yeah, Sammy Watkins, 3 catches, 157 yards and a touchdown. Robert Woods went for 3 for 50 and a touchdown. And this is the guy that you're 100%. If I had to tell you to guess a random Bills player, you're guessing. Said sarcastically, Lee Smith had the other touchdown.
Lee Smith. He was a blocking tight end too. He didn't really go out for passes that much.
Oh yeah, and not a Geno game for the Jets. He did come in, but it was Michael Vick who got the majority of the playing time.
Michael
Just
Vick.
just 18 of 36 for a buck 53 and an interception. No one on the Jets really had themselves a good game. Um, just one of those things. The Bills were so dominant. Preston Brown, Stephon Gilmore, and Denoris Searcy and Aaron Williams each had themselves a pick. Nigel Branham, double-digit tackles. One of those things. Um, like you said, the defense, man. Anytime you're picking off anybody, I don't care who you're playing against 4 times, you should be winning.
Yeah, the Bills were just all over the Jets this game. The Jets obviously weren't a very good team, but yeah, it's definitely
Right.
good to see them go in and handle business. And Kyle Orton, 4 touchdowns on 10 completions. That honestly might be might be a Bills record, might be a NFL record. I actually want to go back and check on that. They get 4 touchdowns, like, you know what I mean. What was like the least amount of completions? That could be definitely
Right.
up there.
Yeah, that's a good point. And definitely a high for the Bills. You know, like you said, the Jets weren't a good team. They lost by 20. They're 1-7 at this point. The Bills 5-3 heading into the bye. I mean, I think all the Bills fans were sitting there like, oh my goodness, like the drought's over. Like this is gonna be like the season we end it all. And head into the bye, come out, play the Chiefs at home, and they drop that one 17-13. Um, Man, before I even look at the defensive stats, the defense gave up 3 points through 3 quarters.
There's one play I vividly remember from this game too that cost us too.
What's that?
So what was his? I forgot what his name was. Bryce Brown, I think, running back for us. He had a.
Oh, for the Bills, yeah.
I think Fred Jackson might have been out this game. Some running backs. I think we had Jackson and Spiller might have been out this game, so he had to get the start.
Let me see. Jackson play. He must have got hurt because he had three carries. Spiller was out. That's another thing to mention. This was mid-season. Spiller and Jackson were dealing with injuries, just like nagging injuries.
So, and I wonder if that's another thing that kind of factored into the Orton decision, because I wonder if they knew those guys were dealing with nagging injuries. And as a point you brought up in the last episode, they're like, we don't trust. Maybe they don't trust EJ to be throwing the ball that many times. If we're going to have to sling it around the yard, maybe we'd rather have Orton in there. But yeah, I mean,
Right.
this was a game that I remember Brown fumbled in the end zone. He had fumbled problems his whole career. I remember even on the Eagles. And yeah, definitely a play you really look back on this season. Like, wow, if this is a game that goes differently, are we talking about this team maybe making the playoffs?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, Bryce Brown, had that fumble and fumble loss. Chris Hogan also fumbled in this game and had a fumble loss. Looking at some stats, nothing that really jumps off the chart. Smith had a nice day, 17-29, a buck 77. No passing touchdowns, but did rush for one. Jamal Charles, 98 yards, rushing. Dwayne Bowe, 8 for 93. He also fumbled in this game, but the Chiefs recovered that one. Orton, 29-48, 259, and a touchdown. Like you said, Bryce Brown was second on the team in carries that game to Anthony Booby Dixon. One of the Bills' fan favorites for sure.
For like a season.
For like a season, yeah. But Chris Hogan, the lone receiving touchdown in that game.
7-11, always open.
7-11, man, always open. But let me make sure this is right. It is right. So Marcel Darius, 3 sacks this game, along with Jerry Hughes, who had 2, and Mario Williams, who had 1. So a 5-sack game for that defense. Like you said, though, some costly fumbles to where you're looking at maybe a couple plays. The Bills are away from looking at 6-3 instead of 5-4.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, definitely a huge letdown this game. I'm not going to say this was a turning point, but again, one of those games you really look back to and you're like, obviously we know how the season ended, but yeah, this very easily could have been the year the drought ended. And this
Right.
is the year this is a game that you really look back on. And you're like, come on. But I'm thinking this now, Ty. I think I might have to make an executive decision because this is a big episode.
It is.
This is a big time episode right here. I think we're going to get into a lot more stuff. I think this might be our first 2-part episode.
Oh, man.
So we may have to end. I think we're going to end the podcast here. And I think we're going to go into a second part sometime in the future because there's still a lot more to get into. And I don't know if we want an hour, 30-minute episode.
Yeah, no, that's actually a great point that you bring up because, like you said, this is not just so much having it be such a long episode, but like you said, this is a season that you and I had a lot of emotions for. Like, you know, it was a great season. We both enjoyed the season, but there's also some heartbreaks for me in this season with, you know, EJ getting benched. So it's one of those things. I think this is the perfect time to leave off. You know, after that KC loss, Bill's sitting. Come on, computer.
Sitting 5-5.
Bill's 5-4.
5-4. 5-4. 5-4.
Yep, Bill's sitting 5-4, and then they got, was it Miami next? Yep,
Miami next.
They got Miami next. Yep, Miami Thursday night. I think is a great place to leave off, and you know, like I said, I think this is a great idea by, you know, you to make it a 2-part episode because there's so much in-depth stuff that we're going into that we already have for this season, but that more that we will go into.
Yeah, this season deserves like a whole 10 to 15 minute review after.
Right.
This was, like I said, this was maybe 04-05 is up there too, but probably in the drought, probably one of my favorite seasons. But I think we're going to end off there. I appreciate everyone that is supporting the page. Again, only one subscriber away from 100.
I think whoever is the 100th subscriber on YouTube will get their username, and for the next episode on part 2, we'll shout them out.
Okay, so sounds good.
We gotta see who it is, whether it's somebody that sees this first and then runs to it to go subscribe, but just something fun, you know, to do to get to that 100th subscriber.
For sure. But until next time, peace out.